Welcome back to Big Bookie, presented by Big Banter Sports, your home for all of Big Ten college sports, football, and soon to be basketball. We're just a few days away from the college basketball season kicking off, and we will have all of the bets, your gambling advice, all of the dogs. There's going to be so many dogs taken this season. We love the underdogs on this show. But right now, we've got five marquee games this weekend, and we are going to kick it off with the largest spread that I've seen in a few weeks. We've got it between conference opponents, I should add. But we've got Indiana visiting the Nittany Lions. Coming off that loss, the Nittany Lions are still in the top 10. That's a good thing. It's a bonus. We love to see that. A lot of top 10 teams in the Big Ten. But they are opening as a 32-point favorite. That's pretty steep, especially in the betting world. That is not a line that we love. But Chris, love to hear your thoughts on this game. Are you going to be betting it, or are you going to stay away?
Yeah, interesting game to look into. A little bit of a bounce back week for Penn State. They might be able to take out some offensive frustrations and perhaps even some defensive frustrations. Last week, I was told that I had a horrible take on Penn State being a slightly overrated defense, and they came out and allowed 365 total yards. They had no defensive turnovers. The only turnover of that game was on a muffed punt. And they also allowed 20 points with a goal line stop and a missed field goal. So their defense really did not come out and look like even the number one defense in that matchup. So I'm excited to see they've come off a really frustrating loss. I think a lot of Penn State fans felt this is their arrival moment. This is their time to really showcase themselves as an elite Big Ten team. And they didn't get that. And now they get to play an Indiana team that this entire conference is beaten up on this year. I personally think it's the weakest team in the Big Ten, and they're playing them at home. I like Penn State to cover. It's not a fun spread to bet, but I do look at this and I think this is a chance for them to take out some frustration. I think Drew Allar especially really struggled against Ohio State, and I think he's a better quarterback than what he was able to showcase against Ohio State. And they still have season in front of them. College football is a crazy world. They still get to play Michigan. They still get to play some other Big Ten teams, to where if they finish out the year 11-1, they will be playing in a marquee bowl game. And who knows, maybe if the cards fall the right way, they beat Michigan. Ohio State's also able to beat Michigan. They could even be an outside playoff team still. So I think for them, definitely a good motivator to come out and really showcase that Ohio State game's behind them. They really are a better team than what they showed. So I would lean towards Penn State covering even this steep spread. I think they can run up the score pretty well. And I think the defense doesn't even allow us a touchdown against Indiana.
I love it. I love it. I do think this is a bounce back week. I don't know how many weeks away the Michigan Penn State game is, but I think if this is the only game or if there's two or three games in between, I think those are going to be the tune up for that Michigan game. And I think they can compete. I think they showed that they're still an elite team, even though they went down, they fell in Columbus. I still think they are very good, and their defense is way better than it has been in previous years. So I view these next few games as really tuning up that offense, making sure they're firing on all cylinders, kind of like you were saying, really let Drew Aller show what he's made of. And I think they'll cover as well. I probably will not bet that. I'll probably just put the Penn State win into like a parlay this weekend, but I think Penn State, they're still a very good team. Indiana, like you said, has not proven much this season, so I think it'll be a walk in the park. And I'm really hoping that Penn State can run it up and show that it was just one game. They're able to bounce back and prove that they still belong in that national playoff, the college football playoff picture. Brandon, love to hear your thoughts.
I think you guys hit it on the head pretty well there. If there's ever a get-right game after a deflating loss, I think the Indiana Hoosiers would be that team you want to face. Penn State, their offense looked awful last week. Defense didn't look that much better, but keep in mind, if that holding call doesn't happen on early touchdown for Penn State's defense, the game could look entirely different. Again, I don't think it would have, considering how Penn State looked the entire way. But offensively, they want to get Aller right this week. They want to get his confidence back, and they are going to be throwing that ball all around the field against this Indiana defense. I think they cover the spread. I don't think I can bet it. 32 points is way too many for me to be comfortable betting, but this is a perfect get back, get the mojo back for Penn State. The season's ahead of them, so that's where I
Yeah,
would lean.
love it, love it. Next game, we have Maryland, who is looking like a pretty good team this year. Started out 5-0, have stumbled the last few weeks, but they're heading up to Northwestern. I don't think that's a very formidable environment when it comes to Big Ten road games, um, because Maryland is opening as a 13.5 point favorite. So, Brandon, love to hear if you're betting this game, how you feel about it, and if the line is too high or just right.
So yeah, a couple weeks ago, I'd say I thought Maryland was a very underrated team, but me and Chris talk behind the scenes. Chris always gives me the Maryland plays good early in the season, go 4-0, go 5-0, play a good team, get smoked, and then the season falls off the rails. Do I think they lose this game? No, but I also don't think they're covering the 14-point spread. Northwestern's strength, I would say, for at least defense, is the pass defense, and that is going against Maryland's strength on offense. And 14 points, especially how Maryland looked against Illinois. I can't bet it. I will be taking Northwestern plus 13.5.
Ooh, first dog of the show. We love it. Chris, how you feeling about this game?
Yeah, like Brandon said, that is a take I've had about Maryland in the past. I feel these guys are the hottest starters in the Big Ten. Every year, I think they come out of the gates pretty good. They're always pretty hyped up, and they always tend to play Ohio State early in the year, and it tends to kind of derail them. They are coming off a bye week coming into this matchup, but it is on the road, albeit Northwestern tickets I checked earlier are $3 right now. So I don't know how sold out that stadium's going to be. But in all seriousness, Northwestern's been a pretty good team against the spread lately. They were able to cover last week against Nebraska, even though Nebraska won, and they beat Minnesota earlier this year. So they've shown they can be somewhat formidable. And I agree with Brandon. They do have a good pass defense and are able to limit the offense well. An interesting note in this will be to see if Maryland's offensive coordinator is able to coach in this game. I know he had some trouble over the bye week with the law, so I don't know what that'll look like as far as if that switches the offense up or anything. But I would lean towards Maryland covering if I had to bet it. I probably will not hit it, but I do feel that Tagovailoa and this Maryland team is at a cross paths here of what do you want this rest of the season to be? They started out so strong and they've tended to sputter later in the year. And the difference between ending this year 9-3 versus 6-6, 7-5 could be a big difference in what bowl they play in and the draft stock that a lot of these players will have. I do think this game just means a little bit more to Maryland and kind of their team. So I do think they will be trying to cover this spread. I would take Maryland if I had to bet it.
Yeah, yeah, we love that. I don't know if I'm going to be betting this game just because I was expecting to see Maryland just come out, resume what they did in those first 5 games, and get back on like that get back game that we were talking about. But I don't think Illinois, maybe it's just because I don't watch a lot of the Big Ten West football, but I don't think Illinois is that much different than this Northwestern team. I do think they have a strong defense. And so I don't feel confident. It could go either way. Like right now, we're split on the picks, and I'm not going to be the one who decides which way we're going as a podcast. I just don't have enough confidence in either of these teams. It could easily be a blowout if Northwestern comes out flat. They'll let them throw all over them, but it also could be Talia isn't comfortable. They're starting to get a little bit of the pass rush, and then no Northwestern covers easily, and it's only like a 3 point game or something close because it's the Big Ten West. That's just kind of the football that they play. So I will not be going near this game. I think it'll be a really good matchup. I think it'll be a really competitive Big Ten football game, but I do think Maryland will come out on top. I think they just have too much offensive firepower, and with that bye week, I think this is their true get back game, season making game that kind of shifts that paradigm that Chris was talking about. Now, moving on to the later slate, we have 2 games in the later slate, the afternoon. start us off, we have the Michigan State Spartans. Not looked very hot this year, but they are making the trip up to Minnesota. Minnesota is a home favorite at 7 points. Brandon, where are you at on this game?
We've said it all season. Michigan State, until they show me otherwise, will be an auto fade. This team's in shambles. It is in disarray. It is just this is not the program that they were even a couple of years ago when they went 11-2. They've got nothing going for them. I'd take this to 10 points, honestly, but Michigan State is not a team I would ever trust to back again this season, at least. So I don't think any other explanation is needed. This team, until they show me otherwise, I'm gonna auto fade them every single time.
Yeah, 100% agree. They just have not shown any glimpse of hope, it feels like, this entire season. The front office and coaching has been like just allegations and all of that going on has just caused a lot of media focus, and then the turmoil that's going on the football field is just not a happy time in East Lansing. And I would agree. I'm taking Minnesota -7. I think they cover easily, and I'm just hoping this Michigan State program isn't in the ground for much longer. Like, there's such a story, like that tradition between big brother, little brother for the state of Michigan. Like, it used to be so competitive. You have the infamous Michigan fan when they block the punt, and it's just like so good year in and year out. And it just sucks to see that this is the nature and the state of their football program right now. Chris, anything to add on this game?
You hit the nail on the head. That's where I was going to go, talking about Michigan State. And even just to expand on it, bummer for being Ohio State fan. Our night game this year against Michigan State, that's not going to have the same impact that I thought it would, with Michigan State struggling so much. And then also the Black Friday game at Ford Field against Penn State. You know, that's a game that I think a lot of people are excited for. And just with how Michigan State's looked, they just don't look like a team that's going to be able to hang with the top of the Big Ten. So I agree with you guys. I like Minnesota -7. Another side bet I'll throw in there would be Michigan State's team total. I usually stay away from team totals, but this team total of 16.5 points. They are 1-4 since Tucker left on the over-under of 16.5. Minnesota's defense, albeit has not been great. They've allowed a lot of points. They looked a lot better against Iowa, albeit not the most strong offensive team. But again, like what we've been saying with Michigan State this year so far, I'm not betting anything on that team until I see otherwise. And I don't see 16.5 points happening for them. I see this being a lower scoring ball game. I see Minnesota covering, and I see them being underneath that 16.5 point mark.
That is a great bet. I'm gonna have to sprinkle that in this weekend. I didn't even think about that. Now, moving into one of the more competitive games, I would say, of this slate, we've got the Purdue Boilermakers visiting Nebraska. Right now, Nebraska opens as a 2.5 point favorite. Chris, where's your head at for this game?
Yeah, well, I'm super pumped to hear what Brandon has to say, knowing how he's been sipping on the Kool-Aid. And this Nebraska team is now a winning ball club. They have a winning record. They've got their quarterback established potentially with Harburg. I think he's solidified himself as the starter. I think one of the biggest things that we expected with Jeff Sims this season at quarterback was, well, he's a dual threat guy. He can run the ball as well as throw, and that's going to add a different dynamic to their offense. Harburg has been able to run the ball really well this year. He has 5 yards per carry. He has over 400 yards running. He has 4 touchdowns. So even though his passing numbers aren't super glossy, he's been able to provide the dynamic I think we thought we'd get from Jeff Sims out of this Matt Rule offense. Nebraska is only getting 39% of the bets on that 2.5 point spread. Purdue's defense has been atrocious this year. They've really struggled in these higher scoring battles. And I think a lot of people might look at Nebraska and say, yeah, is that an offense that can go toe to toe against Purdue, who does score a lot of points? And I believe they're ready for that. I think Rule's offense is really going to get a chance here to play a team that's not a defensive Big Ten West ball club. They're going to be able to play a team where they're going to be able to throw the ball downfield against a weaker secondary. I believe they're going to be able to run the ball well. I believe we do see this week the Nebraska team we thought we would see week 1 and onward, of an offense that does look more like a Matt Rule offense. I'm excited to watch this game. I really like 39%. I think this is my favorite bet this week in the Big Ten would be Nebraska to cover that 2.5-point spread.
Love it. Love it. Brandon, I'm not going to interject just yet. I got to hear this take for this game.
It's a large gulp of Roulade there, Chris. I got to give it to you. I might be drinking it this weekend as well. I got to say. That Nebraska defense, man, is the best unit out of all 4 units going in that football game. Outside of the Michigan game, they've been phenomenal. I mean, even the Colorado game, they gave up 36 points, but when Jeff Sims lets the team start at your own 25 every time, it's hard not to give up 30-something points. This defense is amazing. They're going to shut down Purdue, who's turnover prone this year. And again, like Chris said, Harburg has looked a lot better. He's looking more comfortable as each week goes on. And I think their offense is going to be able to pretty much gash that Purdue defense. I don't think this game's going to be particularly close, meaning Nebraska will probably lose outright. But I will be going with Chris there, and I will also be taking the -2.5 pretty heavily.
Yeah. I think I was the earliest person off the Roulade to begin the season, but this week I'm back. I got to come back. This line is just too good. I think Purdue is not that great of a team this year. I don't think they have a lot of momentum or things going well for them at the moment. So with Nebraska starting to pick up some steam and finding that quarterback that fits into the system, I think this is a perfect game. Like Chris said, like you both said, like this is just the game where you get to see Matt Rule's offense really shine. And so I'm going to be slamming that -2.5, put some units on it, and it's going to make some money this weekend. I can almost guarantee it. I don't want to put a
It'll
full
buy us some
guarantee
more rounds
because
of
it is
Roulade, baby.
still exactly. I can't put it yet because I haven't seen the Roulade work, but if it hits, I'll be right back in. Now to close out the slate, I think this is probably the best game. I think you would both agree of the weekend. And I think it's got a tinge, just a sprinkle of upset material to it. So we've got the Ohio State Buckeyes traveling up to Camp Randall, facing the Wisconsin Badgers, who have suffered 2 losses, so they're out of the playoff picture. And so they don't have those crazy high expectations on them anymore, and I think that favors them. But Ohio State's opening as a 14.5-point favorite. Brandon, love to hear your thoughts on the line and if you'll be betting this game. And who wins, obviously.
So we were on life support going into the fourth quarter last weekend for the win total for Wisconsin. 18-point comeback in the fourth quarter. They didn't look good. They survived a bad team, and now they get the big bad Buckeyes coming into Camp Randall. It's gonna be rocking. It's gonna be loud, but I don't think Locke is going to be having very much success, just like Drew Aller this past weekend. I I know I have Wisconsin over 8.5, mortal lock of the century, but this game is not a game that I think they have much of a chance in. I do like them to go over 8.5 for the total season still. Or what was it, 7? Whatever my bet was, I apologize, but it's not going to be pretty. I don't think Locke's a very stout quarterback, and the Ohio State defense will be feasting. This game will be close for a half, maybe 2.5 quarters, but I think Ohio State covers this point. I think 35-17 is around where I'd put this at. If Ohio State's offense decides they want to play some football. But I haven't bet it yet, but I will be leaning on that 14.5. So we'll see where we go with that officially here by the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. This line scares me a little bit, but Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, fishy line. This was one on Sunday at 3 o'clock when all the college football line drops. I believe I texted Brandon and a couple other guys, and I immediately said, Ohio State -14. That's a hammer. I know it's going to be public, but I love it. And the more I started thinking about it, you look at a Wisconsin team who has 2 losses now, and you think, what's the one game Luke Fickell's probably had circled on his calendar since Cincinnati went in there with Ritter and with Sauce Gardner before they were really the playoff team they were. They went into the horseshoe and really got beat up on. And Fickle, as a
Oh,
former
yeah.
Ohio State guy, a former Ohio State coach, I do believe in his heart of hearts, Ohio State was his dream job. Ryan Day ended up getting that position. I believe Luke Fickell, now going into the Big Ten, has to have had this matchup circled. I believe kind of what you're hitting at, Tyler. This is like their bowl game. This for Wisconsin is their big shining moment of, we're going to be on national television. We get to play the Buckeyes, who are coming off a big emotional victory. Granted, what Brandon was saying, Locke as a quarterback does not look like he's ready for a huge moment like this. I believe Ohio State, it'll be interesting to see if they get Henderson back this week, if they get Egbuka back this week, if they get Burke back this week. They were missing a lot of valuable weapons against Penn State and still managed to win and cover. And shockingly, Ohio State at that 14.5 mark only has 59% of the bets. I figured they'd be a lot more public heavy team that a lot of people would look at. I'm not sure exactly, outside of the hype and the Luke Fickle-esque drama that goes into this matchup, what people might see in Wisconsin. I've been underwhelmed by Braylon Allen. I think they've really missed Ches Malusi. We talked earlier this season about having that 1-2 punch and now not having him. I think that's changed the offensive dynamic. So I do like Ohio State to cover here still. I think this is a good chance for Ohio State's defense to once again shut down an opposing offense. Camp Randall has not looked as difficult to play, as Iowa was able to go in there and win pretty handily. I believe if Ohio State can go out and score 24 points, 27 points, that should be enough to cover this spread. I do like Ohio State this week to manage to be able to cover and keep on covering, as they're on a streak since, I believe, the second game of the season. They've covered or pushed every game. So
Yeah. Like you mentioned, and like I mentioned at the beginning, it's just got under or cover for Wisconsin written all over it. The signs, the stars are pointing at it being Wisconsin's day. They come out. I don't think they'll win. I don't think, with the injuries that you guys have mentioned, the quarterback losing their number two in running back, like, it's just a lot to overcome, especially against his Ohio State team. But I think there is a chance that that first half they may be riding those 2 wins that they have this season. They have 2 ranked top 10 wins, and they've got to be feeling real good right now, especially with Kyle McCord coming in first season as a starter, and they've really proven that they can play in these big moments. I think that they could ride that a little bit, so it may be a little close in the first half. But like you mentioned, with the injuries, if they get Henderson or Abuka or Bird, any of these players who are very impactful players, like, they will make this offense look even better than it has. And I'm not saying in any ways that it has looked as good as it could have, because on paper there's so many weapons, but I do think that Ohio State's defense has just looked so good. It's just a changed team from a year, even 2 years ago. And I think that even with the injuries, Ohio State's defense is going to cause a lot of havoc for Wisconsin's whole offense. I don't think they're going to have a lot of success. And like you said, I don't think it's going to be very high scoring. I think this is still a very talented Wisconsin team. There were a lot of expectations. But I think at this point in the season, I think it'll be a close first half, but they're going to end up covering, I believe. And I'm going to be taking it minus 14.5. Hopefully it moves down. I would love it if it went to like 13.5. We can get like a 28-14 cover. That would be
yeah.
awesome, but
Nice.
I don't think it's going to move.
No.
But yeah, that was great. Last show without basketball. So next week, tune in next Thursday. We will have all of your Big Ten football coverage, as well as our first college basketball
Gonna be
slate.
electric,
It's going to
baby.
be awesome. I am super pumped. I think this year is going to be fantastic for Big Ten basketball. You've already seen the preseason poll. We've got a lot of top 25 teams. I'm really hoping this is the year that the Big Ten doesn't beat itself up, because I feel like every year there's like 4 or 5
Cannibalize.
teams, and we just cannibalize ourselves, and we always go in as like 3, 4, 7 seeds, and then just get crushed in the first or second round. So I'm hoping this year's different, but what do they call insanity? Going through the same exact events and expecting a different outcome. I feel like that's Big Ten basketball.
Bingo.
But any last bets that you want to throw out to our viewers before we wrap up this week?
Yeah, I'll throw one out there if we're going to go outside the Big Ten. I do like to touch on briefly one of my favorite bets this college football season. I like Georgia to cover a lot against Florida. Georgia's only covered one spread this year. I think people are panicking about Brock Bowers being injured. That spread is only 14.5 points right now, and only 23% of the public is on it. I'm really hoping with only 23% of the public on it, that crawls down, as Tyler was saying, to that pivotal 13.5 number, 14 number. And I really like Georgia to beat up on these guys. This is a team that in our Big Ten polls each week, I think we've seen Michigan ranked above just because Georgia really hasn't shown the dominance that they did last year. They have a new quarterback there with Carson Beck. I do believe Georgia comes out this week in what is a rivalry game for them. It's played in Jacksonville. It's neutral site. They call it the biggest cocktail party on earth. That place is rowdy, and I think they go in there and they end this thing early. This is a good chance for them to make a statement of, now that we're getting into the playoff committee here soon, ranking these teams, they're the 1 seed. They are the alpha dog. They are the top team in college football. And here's a great chance to play a team that I ranked personally this week in Florida. Here's a good chance for them to go out similar to the Kentucky game, I feel like, earlier this year, and just beat up on these guys. I really like Georgia this week.
Yeah, I made the mistake of listening to social media and believing that Kentucky was different and they were going to shock the world and cover and maybe even bet. And they got their tails were beaten off in that game. And it blew my parlay. And I was just like, it's Georgia. Why am I betting against Georgia? They're still the same team. They're dogs. Like, I think I'm going to have to sprinkle that one in as well, because I do think there's been a lot of media talk of just like, is this the same team? We don't know. The injury with Brock Bowers and, like you mentioned, Carson Beck, freshman at quarterback, like just a lot of question marks. I think there and Ohio State, but I think both teams have kind of proved, and like, yeah, we're still the same team. We've still got a lot of talent. We're still gonna win games. So yeah, I'm gonna be taking that one from you, Chris.
Love it.
Let's
Love it.
make it a pod ride then, boys.
Let's all
I'll
be on
join
it.
on in.
I want
Love it.
Georgia to be there. I want one of these Big Ten teams to get another shot at those guys. I really felt like
Oh
that
yeah.
Ohio State Georgia game last year was one of the best college football games I've ever watched. It was super entertaining.
1000%.
I think Georgia, the defending national champs 2 years in a row, being in the playoff and getting to play either Ohio State, Michigan, whichever of these Big Ten teams show that they're the strongest. That's what I want to see. And that's what I'm really pulling for and hoping for as a Big Ten fan, because I want to see us knock those guys off before the
You want to
SEC
be the one
knocks
knocking off the
themselves
best.
off.
Yep.
I don't want the
Yep.
SEC to knock them off. I want the Big Ten to go in there and beat those guys. So cheering
Absolutely.
for Georgia, cheering for them to cover,
it.
expect them to cover.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Great episode, boys. And we will see you all. This will be live tomorrow, Thursday, around noon, and then tune in Friday. We will have our picks, our spread, and money line with Brant. He couldn't make it this week, but he will send in his picks. So tune in, and we will see you boys next week.